Hi English 1102 friends. This is a video going over the story The First Day by Edward P. Jones. This is one of the shortest stories. It may be the shortest story we're going to read all semester. It's definitely one of the shortest stories on the syllabus. That's one of the reasons it's the first story that we're reading all semester. It's quick, it's easy to pull out the points and things that I want you to see in it. I'll say just a tiny bit about Edward P. Jones. He is still alive. He teaches in Washington, D.C. now let's see, this doesn't tell us. He was born in 1950, so he's in his 70s now. He's most famous for a novel that came out in 2003, about almost 20 years ago now, The Known World. He won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. He's a pretty important American writer. But I don't like to spend a lot of time talking about writers, as you'll notice as we go through this class. This story is about a little girl's first day at school, and how the thing that she learns that first day is not something that she learns at school. And in fact, the story ends as she's walking into her class, as she's meeting her teacher and walking into the classroom. This is just about this morning where her mom has to get her enrolled in the right school, and she learns this sort of secret about her mom, and that her mom is not this all-powerful figure that she has always seen her as, who knows everything and can control everything and is sort of the king of her little world. And part of what's happening in this story is that her world gets much bigger, but her mom is always the sort of biggest person, the first influence, the biggest influence is what you get at the end of this story. This story is also useful to teach because if you just take the first paragraph of this story, it's a lesson. It's maybe the most important lesson I can teach you about what good writing is and what not good writing isn't. This first paragraph is really strong writing because it is so vivid and clear. You should work all semester to write like this first paragraph is written, in this sort of vivid, clear, nobody could misunderstand what you were saying in your writing kind of way. The other thing that's important about this first paragraph, in an otherwise unremarkable September morning, long before I learned to be ashamed of my mother, she takes my hand and we set off down New Jersey Avenue to begin my very first day of school. Okay, in the first sentence of this, it tells you everywhere the story is going to go. It tells you everything the story is going to be about. And again, that's something that you should work on in your papers for this class. And it's a lot of good writing is good because by the time you leave the first paragraph, and in this case, by the time you leave the first sentence, you know where this is going. What this story is going to be about is this girl's first day of school and how she learns this secret about her mother that will begin this sort of, I recognize that my mother is not perfect and all-powerful sort of process. And that's one of the things that happens as we grow up. If you want to connect this to the larger theme of Bildungsroman, sort of coming-of-age story is, this is the beginning of this girl's coming of age. This is an important moment of her coming of age in the sense that she realizes that her mother is not the all-knowing, all-powerful being that dominates her life. This is the moment when she steps out into a bigger world beyond her mother. And one of the things that's going to happen is this is the beginning of the process where she is going to learn a thing that her mother doesn't know and never knows. She is in some sense going to go beyond her mother because she's going to school to learn to read, something that her mother never learned how to do, which is the secret that she discovers in the process of her mom getting her enrolled in school. The rest of this first paragraph is that vivid, intense detail. It's a lesson in what good writing is, and what is good about good writing, and what is the opposite of that. Often what is not good about not good writing is that it is not vivid and clear. Often when I teach this class and many literature classes, students will write something like, this story is very descriptive. This story is not very descriptive. It's just descriptive enough, and often what students need to learn is it's not that other writing is very descriptive, it's that their writing is not descriptive enough, and they need to look more like this. This is not very descriptive, this is just descriptive enough. Because just descriptive enough is enough to see it clearly. whether it's an instruction manual or a short story or whatever. The writing is supposed to eliminate any chance of confusion and show you something as clearly and fully and completely and effectively. You see that really clearly. I've never been a little girl on her first day of school, but you can see this little girl's experience so clearly that you know what it feels like. I'm wearing a checkered light blue and green cotton dress, and scattered about these colors are bits of yellow and white and brown. My mother has spent nearly an hour plating and replating so that my scalp tingles. When I turn my head quickly, my nose fills with this faint smell of Dixie peach hair grease. The smell is somehow soothing one. My stomach is full of milk and oatmeal sweetened with brown sugar. Like everything else I have on, my pale green slip and underwear are new, the underwear having come free to a plastic package. Behind my ears, my mother has dabbed the stingiest bit of her gardenia perfume, not just any perfume, gardenia perfume. You're getting these vivid, intense, like it's showing you a full, complete scene. The first important things that happens in this story, and the story is sort of prepares you for the revelation that the mother is illiterate and can't read and write. The mom goes to, you see them walking down the street. I'm carrying a pencil sharpener, a small 10-cent tablet with a black and white speckled cover. All the way down New Jersey Avenue, the sidewalks are teeming with children. In my neighborhood, I have many friends, but I see none of them as my mother and I walk. We cross New York, and the mom takes her to this school called Seton, which is near across the street from my mother's church, Mount Carmel Baptist. So the mom takes her to the school that the mom is familiar with, that the mom has seen because she sees it all the time when she goes to church. That's where the mom wants her to go to church. She can't read, so she doesn't know that that's not in the school district. She takes her to the wrong school to begin with. She gets in the school. The woman finds out their address. Then she shakes her head and says that we are at the wrong school, that we should be at Walker Jones. So they're not supposed to be at Seton, they're supposed to be at this other school called Walker Jones. And the mom and this woman sort of go back and forth about it, to the point where the little girl says, "Mama, I can't go to school." And finally the mom gives in and is like, "Fine, I accept it." The mom also is putting herself further out of her comfort zone, because now not only is she going into a situation where she can't read and she's going to have to fill out these forms, but she's going to she has to take the little girl to an unfamiliar place, an unfamiliar space that's not across the street from where she has these resources and has friends and is this place that she's familiar with. Walker Jones is a larger, newer school, and I immediately like it because of that. So they get to the new school, but it is not across the street from my mother's church, her rock, and I sense her doubts as she absently rubs her thumbs over the back of my hand. So the girl's excited because it's this fancy, nicer, newer school than the old school by her mom's church. But the mom is like, "Oh, we're totally out of my comfort zone there. I don't know anybody near here. This is not an area that I know well." And the mom finally has to completely put herself out there and reveal that she's illiterate and can't read or write when she gets inside the school. We find our way to the crowded auditorium where gray metal chairs are set up in the middle of the room. Along the wall to the left are tables and other chairs. Every chair seems occupied by a child or adult. And so they get into this room where they have to get the kids registered for their first day of school, especially in this case for this kid, because it's truly her first day of school. It's her very first day of school. "Is this where they register for school?" my mother asks a woman at one of the tables. The woman looks up slowly, as if she has heard this question once too often. She nods. And the mom gets to forms, and this is when she comes to the moment, obviously, where she's going to have to admit that she needs help. She has to ask this other mother for help. And you have this sort of this is the climax of the story, the big moment of tension, because it's where the mom's secret is revealed. Would you help me with this form? That is, if you don't mind, this form, would you mind helping me fill it out? I can't read, I don't know how to read or write, and I'm asking you to help me. My mother looks at me, then looks away. I know most all of her looks, but this one is brand new because the mom has had to reveal this secret. Again, she has to reveal that she is not the end-all, be-all for this little girl, that she needs help taking care of the little girl in this way. "Would you help me then?" The woman says, "Why, sure," and suddenly she appears happier, so much more satisfied. My mother is now diseased, according to the girl's eyes. So this other little girl whose first day is at school. And until the moment her mother takes her in the form to the front of the auditorium, the girl never stops looking at my mother. I stare back at her. And so the little girl is defensive about her mom, but obviously she has also discovered the sort of limitations of her mom's power. My mother answers the question. The woman reads off the form, and the mom, you find out, has brought like all these documents that she doesn't need: my birth certificate, my baptismal record, a doctor's letter, rent receipts, records of immunization, a letter about our public assistance payments. Every single paper that has anything or even remotely to do with my 5-year-old life. Few of these papers are needed here, but it doesn't matter. And my mother continues to pull out the documents. Again, because she's illiterate, she doesn't know what documents she needs and doesn't need, so she's just brought everything. Again, it is part of this revelation that there are limits to the mom's power, and the mom is having to ask for help. You also have this scene where the mom offers this woman, offers her 50 cents, and the woman accepts it without hesitation. It is this sort of condemnation of this other woman, because finding out that the mom was illiterate made the other woman feel superior. And then on top of that, instead of just helping the mom and saying, no, you don't need to pay me, I'm happy to help you, she took the mom's money too. So it is this sort of condemnation of how this other woman both acts superior but then is willing to take the mom's money. And then you get this last paragraph. The little girl gets enrolled in school. She's good to go. The mom has done what she needs to do to take care of the little girl, including sort of embarrass herself in front of this other woman and this other little kid. But she did it because it's what she had to do to get her kid in school. She was willing to do whatever she had to do, including embarrass herself and admit this sort of, this sort of secret about herself that she is sort of embarrassed about, even though adult illiteracy is really something to be embarrassed about. But she's had to ask for help, something that she clearly doesn't want to do and that she's used to being in control. We go into and then you get the last paragraph. We go into the hall. My mother kneels down to me. Her lips are quivering. I'll be back to pick you up at 12 o'clock. I don't want you to go nowhere. You wait right here and listen to every word she say. I touch her lips and press them together. She puts my hands down at my side, which is not part of the game. She stands and looks a second at the teacher, then she turns and walks away. Her shoes make loud sounds in the hall. She passes through the doors, and I can still hear the loud sounds of her shoes. And even when the teacher turns me toward the classroom, and I hear what must be the singing and talking of all the children in the world, I can still hear my mother's footsteps above it all. So you get this moment at the end of the story where the girl is going into the opportunity that her mom has made for her. It's her first day of school. Like I said, she's about to grow and learn at least one thing that her mom never learned. She's about to go beyond her mom, at least in this one way. But I can still hear my mother's footsteps above it all. Her mom was always the first influence, the biggest influence, the sort of defining influence, the sort of biggest figure in her mind, the biggest influence on her. And so what happens at the end of this story is the mom sends her off into this bigger world where she'll have opportunities the mom never had, but the mom is still always the sort of biggest figure, the biggest influence. So you're having this sort of Bildungsroman coming of age moment, but it's just a moment. You could argue that this isn't a Bildungsroman because it's just a moment. It's just the morning of the first day of school. You could also argue that it is because it's the beginning, it's at least the beginning of this process, and it's one important moment in that process because she finds out that her mom is not all powerful, and then in fact she has this limitation where she needs to ask for help just to get the girl registered for school. So it's just it's an intense morning. Of course, sending your kid to school for the first time is always going to be an intense morning, but then coupled with that is this sort of revelation that her mom has to ask for help to get her enrolled in school. So that's The First Day by Edward P. Jones. Like I said, it's one of the shortest stories on our syllabus, but there's so much you can take from it, from how the first sentence sets up the whole story, that really intense description in the rest of the first sentence, to the ending here, where you get both the girl going out into the wider world, but also the sort of shadow, her mom's shoes, filling her mom's shoes. Her mom's always going to be the biggest influence and the first primary influence in her life. Hopefully you read this story, and it you know, it wasn't too tough to read, and maybe it was even enjoyable for you. You know, everybody's had what this girl had the first day of school. If you have questions about this or about Edward P. Jones, or want to read more Edward P. Jones, like The Gnome World, just be in touch. Otherwise, I hope this video was useful to you, both in the first day and in understanding a little bit of the concept of Bildungsroman, the coming of age story. Thanks much, everybody.